the screen. You check on this on YouTube in case you miss it. It's live streamed. I'm having trouble sharing the screen. Maybe I need to find out why. So it's good. Everyone is now mute, so maybe I can ask the technician why I'm not able to share. I got it. Now, so last week we talked about 3 different types of diagnosis. We talked about the main type of diagnosis, and that was the 3 types of tests. So we had serological tests. We had serological tests, and we had 3 of them. That is the EIA, or enzyme immunosorbent assays. We had rapid tests, and we had the Western blot. So I hope you're still able to remember all these, because like I said, we'll be able to recap on this after week 6 through the cut on the online system. So please try to understand them. Then we had the molecular tests. Here we talked about the isolating the RNA and then doing the molecular test on it, as well as the DNA. So there are 2 types of molecular assays, while there are 3 types of serological assays that we discussed. So I hope you still remember this for those who left early. And then we have the terms that are used during the diagnosis. There are several terms here. We have testing strategy, we have testing algorithm, we have assay, we have the test, we have the testing, we have reactive test and not or not. Then we have the strategies recommended for different prevalence zones. Also, you can be able to see that on your screen. And I hope you can hear me. If you're not hearing me, you can just simply type down there and let me know. Okay. Then something else that we had, we also had what the World Health Organization and the UNAIDS recommend as the threshold to categorize a pandemic or epidemic in a particular region. Then we have the serial and parallel testing. You need to understand something about that. Then we had now the deep discussions. We deep dived onto the different types of tests. Again, you can see from your screen, you have so many things there, including the ELISA, or the enzyme-linked immunosorbent assay, the Western blot, and the simple or the rapid test. Then we had the virological testing, or what we call molecular testing, or nucleic acid test. And we said there are 2 types. And here it involves the extraction of the nucleic acid, be it the RNA or the DNA. After conversion, then we talked about the PCR technique that is normally used during the molecular testing. We also discussed the qualitative and quantitative type of virologic test. You can get all these from your LMS system. I suppose you are able to access the reading material from there, as well as those who are not able to attend the class. You are able to check on this on the YouTube link that was given. Then we have and then something still on the tests. It's important to understand the type of specimen. Like some, you said we need the blood cell free plasma, the serum, or in some cases we need whole venous blood or capillary blood. Then we had a discussion about the reliability of virological testing, especially if somebody is under ART. And so it's important to understand the discussion or the debate between the virologic testing and the ART therapy, so that the compromise that normally arises when there is ART as well as somebody doing your virologic testing is understood properly. Yeah? So something on that. Then we had the viral load test. The viral load test, we had so many things to discuss here. Why we need it, when it's supposed to be taken, and of course the users, and the results of the virology test. So we did all that. Then we had the CD4, the CD4 test. The CD4 test, of course, here we also had a lot of stuff to discuss here. The T4 count, T helper cells, CD4%, and lymphocyte count. CD4 lymphocyte count, those are the names. And we said when it is required, why is it required, when to get this kind of test. And then we also elaborated actually what's being tested here. And just maybe to be into speed on this, we said that when you talk about the CD4, then that are particularly found on the lymphatic system. So the T lymphocytes, of course, the lymphocytes from the lymphatic system. So we have these white blood cells that are normally found in the lymphatic system, and they are the primary target, of the virus. So that once they're destroyed, then the immune system is compromised, and so other co-occurring conditions are likely to come up. It's called T because of the fact that these cells are manufactured by the thymus gland. Thymus gland is one of the glands that produces cells, white blood cells, of course, and this one is normally found around the thymus region. And the thymus region is the region below, or just next to, around the chest, behind the sternum or the breastbone, if you like. Then they're called CD4, CD because of they have markers on their surface. We call them biological markers, something that can be used to maybe differentiate it from the rest of the cells. And these markers are called clusters of differentiation, and they are clustered as number 4. We have different types of clusters, including number 6, number 8, etc. So these ones are clusters number 4, clusters of differentiation marked number 4. So that is why we call them CD4. And then we also have the reason as to why we call them helper. A helper. I think maybe that one did not come out, but we call them helper because these cells sometimes they indicate the presence of an antibody, of an antigen, so that the other types of cells called the B cells can come and engulf the engulf the microbe as a result of the body. So that's why sometimes we call them helper. Then something else that we discussed is how this test is used. So this one we said it can be used to predict the progress of the disease or the worsening of the disease. You can see there. So it's like a predictor trying to indicate the onset, what we call the co-occurring conditions. As a result, prophylaxis here we mean it is that bit of treatment that is normally done to any particular kind of disease before it starts. So this one can indicate for the start of that, so that we can start the prophylaxis. Then we have the effectiveness of the antiretroviral therapy, of the ARV. So we can use this to detect whether the drug under administration is working or not. So this one you use it to detect whether there is proper the effective drug as far as the treatment is concerned, or maybe we are giving the drug, but the drug is not working. Okay. Then as we sum up on what we had last week, when it is ordered, we also had there, maybe if ART is delayed after initiating ART, or maybe during the first 2 years after the stable treatment. You'll forgive me today. I'm somewhere where occasionally you might hear noise at the background, so I hope you will be but I'll try to be audible as much as there is no cause for alarm. And that is that. So that's what we had last week. Then the specimen, the dried blood specimen, and why we like that kind of specimen other than the fresh type. And remember, under the specimen, what is important here is to know which specimen for which kind of assay, which specimen for which kind of assay. If it is a serological assay, for example, it is enzyme immunoassay, which kind of specimen do we use in that case? If it is virologic assay, which kind of specimen do we use in that case? So in this aspect, what I would wish that you carry home here is which type of assay for which type of test, all right? And then other than that, it's important to understand the concept of the dried blood spot. The concept of the dried blood spot, we said that many a times we may be required to carry the specimen to a different location. Maybe the lab is far away, and so we need to carry the specimen to a faraway lab, okay, where the testing can be done maybe at a later date. So in that case, we need to dry it first, and we use the filter paper here. We use the filter paper here. You know, there's less biohazard in this case, and so it can be transported less risky than when you use the fresh blood. So that's what we had last week. So now allow me to go to the item of today. Allow me to go to the item of today, and I hope we are very much together. So today is week 4. So today is something that is very familiar. Today is something that is very easy to understand as compared to the 3 weeks. I hope now it is okay. Now, first things first. So first, I hope you are able to see the screen. Now, first things first. Today, as you can see from your screen, today we are discussing about the transmission, correlates to transmission, as well as the epidemiology. Okay, 3 terms there. Maybe just to break down the terms. Transmission, you're looking at the ways of transmitting the virus from one person to another. The correlates of transmission, we are looking at factors that exacerbate or heighten the risk of transmission. And then epidemiology, we are looking at the general distribution in terms of, the general statistics about distribution, how distribution occurs, the incidences, such like things, right? And so there's a lot of interesting things that you're going to learn. But meanwhile, we start with the first part of the topic, or the subtopic, that is the transmission. All right. So under transmission, okay, those are the things you're going to learn there. The things I will explain there. And this screen, you are seeing the various modes of transmission, behavioral factors, biological factors that determine transmission. Those are the correlates of transmission. Then finally, epidemiology with respect to Kenya, epidemiology of the virus, of the HIV virus with respect to Kenya. That's the last thing that you're going to see there. So we have generally, okay, for transmission, we have generally 3 main ways of transmission. So the other things normally fall here. So here we have number 1, sexual intercourse. Number 2 is sharing of needles, syringes, or other drug injecting devices, or what we normally call contact with contaminated blood. Again, here is simply exposing a person who is healthy, exposing his or her blood to a blood that is not, that is already contaminated. That's what we mean. Then number 3, we have the perinatal transmission. So the perinatal transmission. Now somebody that is unmuting the microphone. I don't know why you unmute. I don't know why you unmute your microphone, please. Yeah, keep it muted. Thank you. So we are saying that we have perinatal transmission. Perinatal transmission simply means mother-to-child transmission, and so that is also something that is worth recognizing or talking about. Now, the other things, for example, if you talk about blood transfusion, it falls in category 2 because we are simply saying that there's direct contamination of somebody's blood by a contaminated blood. You understand? So in that case, we consider it to be part and parcel of number 2, as you can see from your screen. Now, so we have transmission through sex, and here we have different types of sex, suppose you know that, and all these types of sex can lead to transmission. The risks, as far as the different types are concerned, varies. The risks that vary. The risks vary. We have vaginal, oral, or anal. The risks vary, as you will see. So the riskiest sexual activity that can lead to transmission is the anal sex, as you can see from your screen. And here we have 2 categories. We have the top partner and we have the bottom partner. The bottom partner is the receptive partner. I'm on bullet number 2, so that you can be able to follow. So the bottom partner is the one that is at risk the most. Okay, that is the person that's at risk the most, followed by the insertive. But overall, the anal sexual activity is the riskiest as compared to all other forms of sexual activity. So why is the bottom at risk? The bottom is at risk because of the risk is very high because of the rectum lining, which is thin and may easily tear up, thereby allowing the virus to enter the body. Okay. The top is also risky, but not as the bottom, as you can see. But also, why? Why is the top risky? The top is risky because the virus can enter the body through the opening at the tip of the penis or the urethra, or under the foreskin if the penis is not circumcised, or through the small cuts and scratches or open sores anywhere around the penis. So the risks in receptive anal intercourse, or what's called RAI, the risk in RAI is 0.04 to 3%. That is the range of the risk, while the insertive anal intercourse is normally 0.06 to 0.056. So you can see the difference in terms of ranges, and you can be able to appreciate that RAI is the most dangerous, or is the riskiest form of sexual activity. Next is the normal or the vaginal sexual activity. So this one is comparatively to the anal, it is less risky comparatively to the anal. However, this is the form in which most people acquire the virus. This is the form of sex in which most people acquire the virus. Of course, here most women get it through this type of sexual activity because of the fact that it can enter through the mucous membranes that line the vagina as well as the cervix. And also men can get it through any opening around the urethra, the penis, or maybe the cuts, the small cuts around the foreskin, etc., just like in the other case. Then you can see there the range of risk, the insertive vaginal intercourse risks at 0.01 to 0.14%. Then we have transmission from mother to child, or what's called perinatal transmission. So perinatal transmission can occur in three main ways. One, sorry, is during a pregnancy. During pregnancy, it can occur. There can be transmission from mother's blood to fetus blood during pregnancy. It can also occur during birth. During pregnancy, here is maybe through the placenta or something like that. Then during birth process, of course, during birth process, there could be bleeding here and there, as well as cuts here and there, and so chances of transmission is high. Then during breastfeeding, after the birth of the baby, then during breastfeeding, that colostrum, or even generally the cuts that might be there around the breast, etc. So there can be transmission after birth during breastfeeding. Maybe the baby has sores in the mouth, and of course, the colostrum has got some virus, or there are cuts around the breast, and the baby also has got cuts, so that those dynamic contamination. But it's good to appreciate that these days there's a lot of advances in prevention techniques towards this mode of transmission. Mother to child transmission has been brought has been curtailed in several ways because of the advances in techniques of delivery and even treatment prior to delivery using the ARVs, etc. So it's less common. It's less common these days, unless maybe you find that this mother maybe is not delivering in the hospital, or has not been attending the prenatal clinic, or even the antenatal clinic also. There's a lot here you can see, but it's important to understand that during after the birth of the baby, if just in case it is suspected that the baby could be infected, then it's advisable that the baby is put under medication. The baby is put under medication with strong a combination of ARVs for 4 to 6 weeks, okay, to prevent chances of transmission. Then we have transmission from sharing needles, syringes, or any sharp object that can pierce the skin. So here we have direct transmission, or what we call contact with the contaminated blood form of transmission. Okay, so those injectable materials, of course, we all know, can transmit the virus. Okay, and so it's important to be very careful when we are using sharp objects. So maybe for those who inject drugs, okay, such like things. Of course, other than the virus itself, it's important to understand that use of injectable materials, there are other forms of diseases or other diseases that can also be transmitted in that particular manner. One of which is hepatitis B as well as hepatitis C. Okay, these are also blood-related transmissions, other than the other types of hepatitis. For example, A and E, those ones are not transmitted via blood, but B and C are transmitted via blood, and so the cuts can also lead to that, the cutting materials. Then we have rare ways of transmission. Rare ways of transmission. So Of course, people normally wonder whether these other forms of contact can lead to transmission of the virus. So we have the following, and these ones are not common ways they can transmit, but they are not very common ways of transmission unless something extraordinary happens, something that is not premeditated happens. For example, if there are bleeding gums, open wounds in the mouth, etc. So we have number one, oral sex. Number two, pre-chewed food. Number three, biting. Number four, deep open mouth kissing. Number four, female to female sex, or lesbians if you like. Number six, tattoos and body piercing. Tattoos and body piercings. So oral sex, here, the risk is limited. The risk is limited, and all the different types, as you can see there, the risk is limited. However, in the event that one of the partners has got oral ulcers or the bleeding gums or genital sores, okay, and the presence of other STDs or sexual transmitted diseases, then there are going to be chances of transmission, okay. But if these factors that I've mentioned are not there, then the chances is very limited. The chances of getting the virus through oral sex is very limited. We have different categories there. We have fellatio, we have cunnilingus, and we have grooming. All these are forms of oral sex, but they pose less risk unless there are conditions like the ones I've mentioned here. Then we have pre-chewed food. Again, the pre-chewed food, this one is also very rare. But of course, we find that in certain cases, somebody might chew food and then maybe give to the baby so that the baby can swallow the food. Of course, may not be recommended because not only is it unhygienic, it is likely to the food has got sores in the mouth, maybe has got bleeding gums again, and of course you find that maybe the person who the food is being chewed for example, if that person is an infant or a baby, then the likelihood that the baby might have some sores in the mouth, and so that contact with contaminated blood will be there, and so the transmission can occur. Okay. Then you have biting. Of course, biting can also transmit, but again here it is very limited chances of transmission. Why? Because when there is biting without breaking the skin, when there's a bite but the skin does not break, then it means you're not going to have the blood oozing from any part of the body. Okay, and in that case there will be minimal transmission. But if the skin is broken, and of course there are wounds or the mucous membranes, the blood and the fluid can mix, and this can lead to the contraction of the virus. Okay, there's no risk if there's no breaking. Then we have deep open mouth kissing, deep or open mouth kissing, and then this is very rare. This is very rare unless there are conditions just like the ones that we mentioned under oral sex, under biting, etc. Either there are sores in the mouth, there is bleeding gum, there are things like other diseases, other forms of diseases. For example, if we have something like Candida albicans or candidiasis, maybe those are the things that can lead to transmission during deep mouth kissing. However, if you don't have these conditions, then there's no cause for alarm as far as transmission is concerned. Then we have female to female. Female to female, again, rare unless there is contact through vaginal fluids or through menstrual flow. Of course, the vaginal fluids and the menstrual flow, we know they likely carry the virus if the person is positive. However, if there is no contact with these fluids, then chances of transmission from one female to another is very, very rare. Okay. Then tattoos and body piercings. Tattoos and body piercings, just like injectable materials. Well, during tattoos and body piercing, we normally have some needles that are used to pierce the skin, and of course, we also have the ink. We also have the ink that's normally used for making the tattoos for those drawings there. So, if there is no sharing of the needles and the ink, then there's no cause for alarm. But if maybe the person that is doing the tattooing is using one needle in one person and another person and using the same ink, maybe dipping the needle in the same ink, using another person, there's likelihood that there can be transmission from the ink or from the needle itself. Otherwise, if there is always use of different needle, different ink, then there is no cause for alarm. Okay. Now we have factors that enhance transmission or factors that exacerbate transmission. The factors are categorized into two. We have behavioral factors and we have biological factors. So remember, these factors are not transmission factors. Then, for example, is different from transmission. What you discussed here, so far so good, is transmission, methods of transmission. However, now we are going to note methods of transmission, but the factors that increase chances of transmission. The fact that increase chances of transmission. So I hope you are able to understand the difference. Now, what about the factors that increase chances of transmission? We have one, behavioral factors, and two, biological factors. Now, behavioral factors, we have different ways. So we have behavioral factors. So we have this one. You have number one, a type of sexual partner. Number two, a concurrency of the sexual partners. And then, so we can discuss the two and we'll see how that goes. Then we have biological factors. We have the plasma viral load and the stage of infection. We're going to see how that one works. Then we have the sexually transmitted infections, so the STIs. Then we have pregnancy and also transmission as well as factors that exacerbate transmission biologically. So now, to the behavioral factors. We have number one, we have type of sexual partner. So here there are two categories, and maybe I want you to hear me and hear me good. There is something interesting here. We have regular and non-regular partners. We have regular and non-regular partners. Okay. We have regular and non-regular. So we have partners. This is somebody that you have sex with every other time. You're one and only, so to speak. Then we have non-regular. This is somebody that is picked on the highway, and you have sex with her, he or him. In other words, it's somebody that is not your regular partner, but somebody that you can meet and have a fling or two, and then life goes on, you know. So it is said that regular sexual partners, the chance of transmission is high than non-regular. Though on the flip side, you will also find that non-regular, of course, there are consequences. But regular, the chances of transmission are high than non-regular. Why? So for the main, the regular or the main partner, why is it that the transmission is high? It is high because number one, there is increased exposure. Why is there increased exposure? There's increased exposure because there are more sexual activities with this person. Every time there is contact, So in the event that one of the partners maybe had a non-regular or a casual contact outside there, and then maybe bad luck, something happens, and this is normally what happens even between couples, you know. There's a time that there were reports that the rate of infections in couples is high. It's because of this, because there's regular activity. Of course, here, you know, there's nothing like protection. There's nothing like the cushion is on the wind because this is your person, right? But on the at the back, maybe something happened, and maybe you guys are not aware, and so just some transmission is high. Number two is that with regular or the main partner, there is likelihood of an engagement in risky sexual behavior. There's likelihood of an engagement in risky sexual behavior. Why? Because now this is person that now the kind of chemistry is so high, you become used to so much to each other, and there's likelihood of even trying things like rye with the main partner, trying things like rye. I know by now I suppose you know what rye means in full. So because of that aspect of being overzealous about each other, because this is the main person, there is likelihood of transmission. Then we have less condom use. Of course, this is normal. This is normal with main partners. Less condom use with main partners than with casual partners. Okay, yeah, no more explanation there. Things very direct, and you all know about that. For if you meet somebody new, you'd like to say that, oh, let me use some bit of protection. But if it's your person that you meet every other time, there is no cause for alarm. You will say it's okay. Let's just have it without any form of protection, and that is the risky bit of thing we're talking about here. So that's the reason as to why regular partner, the risk of transmission is very high. Now, number two is concurrency of sexual partners. Now, concurrency here is now is like saying having multiple partners or overlapping sexual partners. Overlapping here is to mean, like, let me say, a community kind of thing, a community kind of sex, where you find people are sharing partners, etc. So you call it overlapping sexual partners. Then multiples where somebody just has got many. So in that case, these are reasons, these are cases that can heighten the risks of transmission. These are cases that can exacerbate the risk of transmission because you feel that, with multiple or with overlapping sexual partners, the control is not there. Okay, you never know. Maybe one of the partners again also having multiple or also having overlapping partners, and so it's a chain, and the circle continues. And with that chain, there's likelihood of transmission. This is different from when we have serial monogamy. I know serial monogamy is what is considered an absolute way of reducing chances of transmission. Okay, but for overlapping and multiple partners is common, especially in our African societies, most importantly the sub-Saharan Africa. The sub-Saharan Africa, from below the Sahara and downwards, we have so much of concurrency of sexual partners, and so even the fact that we have high numbers in sub-Saharan Africa is probably because of this fact. This is one of the reasons that has been cited as to why we have so much on Africa, on sub-Saharan Africa, talk about on as far as AIDS and HIV is concerned. Then we have biological factors. Now, as to biological factors, these are factors that increases rates of transmission or chances of transmission biologically. In other words, on what is happening with our bodies as far as the transmission is concerned. Number one, we have plasma viral load and the stage of infection. So first of all, I'll go with the plasma viral load just to explain it. Now, plasma viral load, of course, we have done the viral load test, and we say that the viral load test is that kind of test that we look for the number of viral particles per cubic milliliters. The number of viral particles per milliliter of blood or per cubic millimeters. Per cubic millimeters or per milliliter, per ml of blood. Okay, that is viral load. So, if we have high viral load, you said more than 100,000 copies and beyond, for example. If we have high viral load, call it high plasma viral load, then chances of transmitting this virus is so high than if the viral load is low or is gone beyond 20. It's undetectable. It has gone beyond 20,000. It has gone beyond 20,000 or undetectable levels, then the risks are minimal. If it has gone beyond 20, in particular 20, then the risk is very minimal because there are lower chances of transmission, and of course, just a minute. All right, let's be back. So I was saying that low or undetectable viral load, less chance of transmission. However, high viral load, high chance of transmission. The number two, in that point number one, is the stage of infection. Now, what about this one? As for the stage of infection, of course, we have primary infection, we have latency stage, and we have the AIDS stage or the late stage. Okay, we have three stages like we discussed before. Now, for the primary stage, this is the stage that precedes the the first few months, the stage of the first few months after exposure to the virus. The first few months after exposure to the virus. Now, these first few months, the chances of infection or transmission is very, very high. The chance of transmission is very, very high. Why? We have several reasons tied to this. And also late stage, that is when we have the AIDS stage, also the chance of transmission is very, very high. And the reasons are almost similar to the viral. For the late stage, that is, the reasons are almost similar to the plasma viral load. Because remember that we said that at late stage, that is the stage of maybe 6 to 35 months prior to death, 6 to 35 months prior to death, we find that there is high viral load. And that means chance of transmission from one partner to another is equally very, very high. Okay, good. So now, why is it that primary infection has got high rate of transmission? The primary infection, that the first few months, like the first 21 days, after 21st day, then going on to almost 3 months, when the most of the serological tests still are not working, are not reliable, there are higher chances of transmission there. Why? Number one, because there is the transient high viral load in the blood and genital tract. The transient high viral load in the blood and genital tract. That is the time that there is seroconversion. There's the time that seroconversion, where the virus is attacking the cells, replicating very fast and integrating itself. There is high transient viral load in the blood and genital tract. Transient here is because there is seroconversion taking place. All right. Seroconversion simply means that the blood cells, those fighters, the lymphocytes, the CD4 count, are being converted to have the virus as part and parcel of their DNA. So during that period, you realize that there is high transition of the virus having attacked the body and transiting to form part and parcel of the DNA of the host cells. And so that time, there is high rates of transmission. Number two is the high incidence of concomitant STIs. High incidence of concomitant STIs. Concomitant STIs are normally associated with HIV. But when you see HIV or somebody started to be having HIV, there is likelihood of occurrence of a particular kind of an STI, or sexually transmitted infection. One of such infections normally called genital ulcer disease. The GUD, or the genital ulcer disease, is normally common with any HIV patient. All right. And so, as a result of this, there is high rate of transmission because of genital ulcer disease. There are openings around the urethra, around the vaginal openings, and around. There are cuts. Not cuts, but they are openings because of this kind of disease. Lacerations. Sometimes they call them like that, or simply openings as a result of a disease. And of course, this one is normally with STIs, and so high rate of transmission. Then number three is lack of awareness of the changing serostatus. Lack of awareness of the changing HIV serostatus. At this particular time, what we mean by this point is that this person is not aware that already the person is infected, and as a result, there is conversion, change of serostatus from negative status to positive status taking place. And so the person is saying that, oh, I'm healthy, not knowing that you are healthy, yes, but something is happening in your body. And so going on, now this is more of social aspect, going on having engaging other partners, the risks are imminent. Okay. Give me just one minute to check on my. So mm, you can see it's not rather steady. Transmission. That's what we mean there. Then we have. I'll share again. I don't know whether you're seeing my screen. I don't know what has happened to my screen. Let me get it back. Let me get it back. There seems to be a problem. Yeah, there you are. So Let me share my screen one more time. You can see it. Okay, there you are. I'm back. So we go to the epidemiology. As you can see, this is a very short topic today. We are going to complete it and introduce topic 5. Okay, if you won't mind. Now, epidemiology of the virus locally, that is in Kenya. So, first of all, we need to understand the meaning of epidemiology. This is a common term. You must have heard of it elsewhere. So, what is epidemiology? Epidemiology is a branch of medical studies that deals with the incidence, distribution, and possible control of diseases and other factors relating to health. It's a branch of medical studies that deals with incidence, distribution, and possible control of diseases and other factors relating to health. Okay? So we have some terms that are normally associated with epidemiology. It's important to understand these terms. Number one is HIV prevalence. I know you must have heard of this, HIV prevalence. These terms are common. So every time they talk about the prevalence, basically what they mean is that this is an estimate. It's an estimate of the number of people living with, sorry. It's an estimate of the number of people living with the HIV virus in a particular country, for example, or region. Now, this estimate includes those who have been diagnosed with the virus and those who have not been diagnosed, but they are thought to be having the virus. When they say Kenya is 4.5% infected, or Kenya, the prevalence in Kenya is 4.5% of the population, or maybe let's say that one is now 2 million. Then that 2 million, they haven't tested the 2 million. What has happened is that they have tested maybe 1 million, and then they have doubled the number. They have seen that now the other 1 million, we know they have the virus, but they haven't come for testing. So in that case, we say HIV prevalence. All right. Now this term is normally important, and it helps the Minister of Health to understand the overall current status of the virus in the country and to estimate the number of people who need access to treatment. So even if they want import drugs, so they want seek for help from the donors to give drugs, then they will always use the prevalence data, the prevalence data, so that they can say, now you look here, all these people are infected. Then we have prevalence rate. Prevalence rate. Now, as for prevalence rate, for prevalence rate, we're looking at the number of persons with the virus per 100,000 of the population. The number of persons per 100,000 of population. Get the difference between this and the prevalence. For the prevalence, we say it's an estimate for both the diagnosed and the non-diagnosed. But here, the prevalence rate is the number, the exact number of persons per 100,000 of the population. It's a clear statistic here, so that is what we call a prevalence rate. Then we have persons diagnosed with the virus. Now, this one is different. Now, for persons diagnosed, now this one includes all the persons that have been diagnosed with the virus and are still living. They have been diagnosed with the virus but are still living, regardless of when the diagnosis was made. Have been diagnosed with the virus but are still living, regardless of when the diagnosis was made. Okay? They are still living, diagnosed and still living. So this number is different from the prevalence. Remember, the prevalence has got an estimate, But this number is the actual, okay, number that has been tested, that has been found to be having the virus, and they are still living. I hope you get the data clear. I hope you get the understanding of that clear. Then we have the diagnosis. The diagnosis. Now, the diagnosis here is different from persons diagnosed. Again, these two terms again are normally confusing. Here we have persons diagnosed, but here we have diagnosis. Now, diagnosis are persons who have been diagnosed with the virus during a fixed time period. They have been diagnosed during a fixed time period. And this, what is this time? This time is typically 1 year. It's typically 1 year. So all the people that were discovered to be having the virus in the past 1 year, for example, here in Kenya, we call that diagnosis. We call that diagnosis. This data is important to help understand the trends in the burden of the disease, helps in understanding the trends in the burden of the disease. Then we have the incidence. We have the incidence. Now, what about the incidence? So we talk about the HIV incidence. We are basically referring to the estimate of the number of persons who newly acquired the virus during a fixed period of time. It's an estimate of the new infections in a fixed period of time, typically 1 year period. Okay. Now get the difference between this and the prevalence. This is also an estimate, just like in the prevalence, this is also an estimate, but this kind of estimate is for a typical fixed 1 year period. We'll use the data from the diagnosis to get this. So the data from the diagnosis, what we'll convert, we'll do calculations and convert this into incidence. All right. I hope you're able to understand that. We use the data because now, assuming that we have 100,000 as diagnosis in the past year, then you can say that maybe among the 100,000, okay, from that population, we have some other 100,000 that did not come for the diagnosis, but they could be having the virus as well. So we call them together with the diagnosis, we combine and we have incidence. Okay. This data is very important because it normally helps inform the CDC of the effectiveness of ongoing prevention strategies. Now, the CDC is, suppose you know, this is in full is Center for Disease Control. Center for Disease Control. This is an American worldwide organization that is concerned with the control of diseases all over the world. And so they do a lot of charity work. Even here in Kenya, you might have seen the CDC vehicles, or even that's the CDC offices. Okay, so they guide the world on how to control most of these diseases, together with the World Health Organization. Then we have the incidence rate. Now, as for incidence rate, here we represent the persons who newly acquired the virus in a fixed period of time. Represent the number of people who acquire the virus in a fixed period of time, but per 100,000 population. Every time you see rate, it is per 100,000 population. The rate is an estimation of something over something, you understand? So here we are talking about the incidence rate as maybe new infections for in 100,000 population within 1 year. Now, let's go now to something that's very interesting. This is now where the rubber meets the road as far as epidemiology in Kenya is concerned. So you want to look at epidemiology in Kenya. Now, the prevalence. I hope now you understand. And I say the prevalence. Now, the prevalence here in Kenya, as of 2019, at the end of 2019, of course, we don't have the new data yet, but because of the disruption of the COVID. When the COVID-19 came, then the data about the HIV was somehow beaten. It took a backseat, so to speak, and people are now more focusing on the coronavirus and the lives and the, so this one took a backseat. However, it's important to understand the data so far so good, so that we can use this even to estimate the current situations. So at the year end 2019, the data was showing that the prevalence was 1.5 million persons. 1.5 million Kenyans were having the virus. This includes both diagnosed and non-diagnosed. That's why it's called prevalence. This one is presented to convert to about 40 million people that time. And maybe now we are 50 million, right? But about 40 million people, it was about 4%. It was about 4% if you do the calculation. Then we have the prevalence by groups. Of course, the dates you're going to have here, or the dates as for the years, these years are specific time when this data was given out. But of course, it's a replication of what happens even today. Yeah? It's a replica. Little has changed, if any. It can only get worse. Huh? So sex workers had the highest estimate rate at 9%. Okay, with the highest number of female sex workers being leading. Then men who have sex with men, this is according in Kenya. Men who have sex with men, I hope you understand. The homosexuals. It's a common thing these days. As of 2010, it was 18.2% of the total infection. Okay. Then we have people who inject drugs. As of 2011, it's 18.3%. Then young people, where you guys belong, they accounted for more than 51% as of 2015 of new infections. More than 51% as of 2015 of new infections. Amongst these, between the age of 15 to 24 were the highest, between the age of 15 to 24, because there was a big rise from 2013 of 29%, but between the ages of 24 as the highest. And between that age of 15 to 24, majority are young women, just almost twice as the male counterparts, okay, and accounted for 33% of the 51, okay, the total number of new infections. Young men accounted for 16% of all new infections. New infections, okay. So if you ask yourself, why do we have this kind of statistics, or why is it that we have high number of the young people, especially between the age of 15 to 24, which is the university age, I suppose? Yes. So why do we have high rate of infection, especially among the female population here? Number one is incorrect perception of the HIV. Incorrect perception. No, people feel, oh, it's not easy. It's not easy to get it. No, I'm far from it. You know, I only have one sexual partner. No, always go for protection. Incorrect perception. Number two, having unprotected intercourse under influence of alcohol or drugs. That is, having unprotected sexual intercourse under the influence of alcohol and drugs. Again, this is something that's noteworthy. Is something that, of course, people battle out with every other time out there. Then we have another factor, that is forced sex and sexual violence. Also, you find that most of the people are forced having sex, maybe for some kind of favors or something like that. And what does that mean? It only contributes to the increased chances of infection. Okay. So if you read further, you'll notice that this is particularly more pronounced where we have young women who are three times more likely to be exposed to sexual violence than young men. Of course, you know the dynamics, you know the reasons as to why. It's estimated that 3% of the girls have been raped by the time they reach the age of 18, while 22% of the girls aged between 15 to 19 describe their first sexual experience as forced type, right? Forced. So you get the reasons. Now, then we have women, that distribution. So as of 2018, women accounted for 6.6% of the people living with AIDS, while men accounted for 3.1%. It's more than that, right? Again, there are so many dynamics that may lead to this. Okay. So in terms of age, women aged 20 to 34 were more than 50% of the 6.6%. 6.6% population infected. So we say that overall, around 6.6% of women were infected. And out of that, the age bracket of 20 to 34 was the majority, more than 50%. And this is the same case in many of the sub-Saharan Africa, where we have many women being infected. And there are so many reasons to that. We have discrimination in terms of education, employment, and healthcare. That bit of discrimination is doing a detriment to the ladies. As a result, men often dominate sexual relationship, with women not always able to practice safe sex, even when they know the risks. True? Yes, very, very true. Okay. So we have several statistics there as far as why most women get infected. Then we have another interesting area here is prevalence by region. Prevalence by region. Prevalence by region. So here we have regions in Kenya where the prevalence rates are so high, and we have regions in Kenya where the prevalence rates are so low. Now the prevalence rates are so high in regions around Nyanza. We have, of course, in towns, we have Nairobi, the leading, and then Mombasa, followed by Mombasa. Of course, they account for high numbers. But when it comes to counties, we have counties in Nyanza, like Homa Bay, Kisumu, and Siaya, as the leading. They have more than 90%. They have more than 9% of infection. And then we have regions, or we have counties in northeastern, where we have, and northeastern northern region, where we have Majia, Mandera, Masabit, areas like that, Isiolo, etc. We have lower risks, some as low as 1%. Okay, like Wajir, having as low as 1%. So those are the statistics as far as the regions are concerned. Okay, now we still have time. And ladies and gentlemen, this time, so I want us to, this week was a short week and disadvantage to us in this case. It's a blessing to us in this case. That is, I want us to look at week 5. Look at what we have, so that we, even if you don't go through the whole of it, we'll have basics of introduction as far as that week is concerned. Okay. So I'm sharing the document for week 5, and then I'll send week 5. I'll put it on the LMS. Week 4 is already on the LMS, so I hope you are able to get access. We are able to get access to week 5. Now, so this is week 5. So week 5, we have the immune system and the co-occurring conditions. Another very, very interesting area. We have the immune system and the co-occurring conditions. I hope you'll be able to inform your colleagues that have left that we have actually covered 2 areas. And also they have to prepare for exams. And when they're preparing for exams, remember week 1 to week 6 will be part of the exam in 2 weeks time. So I hope they'll be well prepared. Now, as for this week, we are going to understand the immune system. The topic is immune system and the co-occurring conditions. So just going to look at the brief overview of the immune system. Then we are going to understand the immune system in relation to the opportunistic infections or the co-occurring conditions. In other words, we're going to be asking ourselves, how does co-occurring conditions relate to the immune system? And in that case, we are going to look at various forms of opportunistic infections that are normally linked to low immune system, and you're going to see the nexus or the link between when the immune system is likely to be too weak for attack by histoplasmosis, for example, or tuberculosis, for example. So we have tuberculosis as the main opportunistic infection that we're going to look at. We have toxoplasma encephalitis, another one. We have pneumocystis pneumonia. We have cryptococcal meningitis. We have cytomegalovirus. We have histoplasmosis. We have coccidiomycosis. We have esophageal candidiasis. Esophageal candidiasis, right? Starting to do with the throat and all that. So we're going to look at these. And here we have a lot of medical approach here. I'm sorry, but that's the best way to understand it. You're going to have a lot of medical approach, and it's a detailed week. And so I hope you will be able to pick a thing or two about it. We're not doing this for being medics, but of course, it's important to understand the basics as far as opportunistic infections are concerned, the infections that normally come as a result of the weakened immune system. Now, so to the immune system, there's some simple biology here. I'll not go deep, but just to give you a brief overview of what we have as the immune system. So the immune system is normally a collection of cells, tissues, and organs in the human body with the combined function of protecting the body against invasion by diseases. So these are several cells, tissues, and organs, okay, with a combined effect of protecting the body against diseases. All right. So we have bullet number 2 there. We have what's called immunological response, or the response that the body normally gives against diseases. So the immunological response against diseases, that is, we have 3 broad areas to consider in that. When the body is attacked by a disease, then the response are 3 broad-based. We have defense against the microbe. Okay, that is where the body defends itself against the invading microorganisms. Number 2 is homeostatic function or homeostasis. This is about the removal of the damaged or the affected cells Allow me to correct this. The removal of the affected cells. Let me call it that. So in that case, the body can decide to, depending on the type of infection, to remove the affected cells in form of waste products. That's called homeostatic response to the immunological aspect, or the homeostatic response to an infection. Number 3 is surveillance. Surveillance is recognition and destruction of the mutant cells, recognition and destruction of the damaged cells. Called surveillance. Having understood that, so we have 2 terms here that are normally common when we talk about the immune system. We have the antigen and the antibodies. Antigen are the molecules that stimulate the immune response. For example, if somebody has been attacked by a disease, the body will respond by producing antibody. The disease-causing organism will produce antigen. Chemicals, the antigens are chemicals of molecules that are able to trigger a reaction in the body, and these chemicals are produced as a result of they are produced from the disease-causing organism itself. So we have disease-causing organisms like virus, bacteria, fungi, protozoa, parasites. Of course, when they attack the body, they'll produce chemicals there. Okay, they'll produce metabolites there called antigen. In response, the body will produce antibodies. The body will produce what? Antibodies to counter the effect of the antigen. The antibodies are called immunoglobulins, And of course, these antibodies, definitely, we don't want to dwell so much in them for now, but just know that they are Y-shaped protein produced by B cells of the immune system in response to the exposure to the antigen. Okay? Uh, B cells, that one, hold it there. But just know that the antibodies are those proteins that are produced in response to the attack by the antigen from the diseases. Then we have immunity. Now, what is immunity? It's the ability of the body to resist an infection or toxin produced by an infecting particle. Ability of the body to resist an infection or toxins produced by the infectious particle, such as bacteria. Okay. Now, into the breaking down of the immune system, and I'm just summarizing, ladies and gentlemen. I will not go so much deep into it. We are not biological science students, neither are we medical science students, are we? No, we are not, right? So I will not dwell so much in, but just to bring you to speed on what. So we have two types of immunity. We have innate immunity and we have acquired immunity. So innate is immunity that is inborn. It is non-specific. It's immunity that is inborn, and we have so many factors there that relate to it. Then we have, so you can see there, innate immunity of the inborn, the something that somebody is born with. You can see the characteristics here. The responses are broad spectrum. That's non-specific. Any form of attack on the body, they can respond. Okay. And then there is no memory or lasting protective immunity. They don't have memory. For example, once you're attacked by a disease and there's an innate immunity response, then that innate immunity response does not last, such that next time when the same disease comes in, it responds again from the previous response. Unlike in artificial immunity, where you will see that maybe once somebody has been injected or has been immunized, then it recurs. Just with a memory. So that's not the case. Then number three, there's limited repertoire of recognition molecules. Then the response are phylogenetically ancient. They are derived from the genetical relationship between the parents to grandparents, so the situation like that. So what are the components of the innate immunity? We have anatomical barriers, we have secretory molecules, and we have cellular components. Again, I'll not go so much deep into this, but of course, here you look at, when we talk about anatomical barriers, we have some aspect of the innate immunity. For example, the roughness of the skin can keep off some bacteria or some disease-causing organisms. Then we also have secretory molecules, where we talk about the antibodies being secreted to counter the effect of the diseases. Then we have the cellular components. Now, the cellular components is where we have the cells that do the work of engulfing, certain disease-causing organisms. For example, the phagocytes. So we call that cellular components. So as for the components, they are well described here. Like we have the mechanical factors. You can see the skin, the presence of cilia, the peristalsis that can help flush out certain microorganisms from the alimentary canal or the or the gastrointestinal tract. We have the tears and the saliva. All these things are antiseptic, and they help us in one way or the other to reduce chances of infection. The mucus also plays an important role by trapping certain kind of infection from going into the airways. Then we have chemical factors. So chemical factors are those chemical products produced by the body that also help fight diseases. Examples are fatty acids in sweat, which inhibit growth of bacteria, lysozyme and phospholipase in tears, also low pH in sweat. All these things are chemicals that also prevent infections. Okay. Then we have further descriptions here. Then we have cellular components. As for cellular component of the innate immunity, here we have the cells. Like I mentioned, we have several types of white blood cells that are involved in protection of the body against infections. These several white blood cells, we now call them cellular component of the innate immunity. Innate immunity, ladies and gentlemen, one more time, is an inborn form of immunity. We are born with a protective form, okay, in form of anatomical features, we have chemicals, and we have cellular aspects. So under the cellular aspects, we have different categories of white blood cells. You have all of them here. We have granulocytes. We have, under that, we have neutrophils, basophils, and we have eosinophils. You can do your reading there. Then we have granulocytes. Here we have monocytes. We have lymphocytes, where our main discussion is concentrated here at the lymphocytes. At the lymphocytes, all the white blood cells, that is, okay, found in the lymph, okay, where we have the T helper cells, etc. So those are cellular components of the immune system. And then we have the adaptive or the humoral specific immune system. Now, this is the other wing of the immune system, where here we have the acquired type. Okay, you can also call it acquired type. So here we have the characteristics. As you can see, they are antigen specific. They are diverse in nature. They have got the memory, immunologic memory. They are not self-recognizing. They're not self-recognizing. For example, it cannot detect itself. Tetanus, then we have that immune system already. I mean, the immunized form of tetanus already existing in our blood. Then that immune system will not recognize that the other tetanus is a foreign material, so that it attacks it. It will live there without recognizing itself until now a new tetanus comes in form of a disease. Is when they will be active to attack it. So lymphocytes are the most important form of cellular component of the innate immunity that we are interested in as far as this course is concerned. Why? Because it is from the lymphocytes where part of the lymphocytes is targeted by the virus, and that is the CD4 is targeted by the virus. So like we can see here, we have different types of lymphocytes. We have the B cells, we have the CD8, and we have the CD4. Okay? The lymphocytes, we have the CD8, we have the CD4, and we have the B cells. Okay? So the CD8, their work is to kill the virus-infected and damaged cells. They kill the virus infected and damaged. They deal with the cells that have been attacked by the virus. They kill them and damage them. It is also called cytotoxic T cells. Then the CD4, our main guy here, the CD4, their main work is to help cytotoxic T cells, or the CD8, and the B cells in their immune functions. It's a helper. That's why it's called helper cell. Helper T cell, or the CD4. So that time, every time we talk about the T helper cells, or the helper T cells, if you like, the CD4, several names here, T lymphocytes, okay? Their main work is to help the cytotoxic T cells and the B cells to do their work. Cytotoxic T cells, or the CD8, we've said, their work is to kill the infected cells. Okay? Now, the B cells, on the other hand, are the ones that produce the antibodies. They are the ones that produce the antibodies. Even when HIV virus attacks the body, antibodies will be produced, right? The antibodies are not produced by the CD4. The antibodies that will be produced in response to the attack by the virus will be produced by the B cells. Will be produced by the B what? B cells. Now the helper cell is simply to help the B cells and the cytotoxic T cells to do their work. Okay. So the central role of T helper cells here is can still do the reading. Again, I don't take so much time here because we are not medics or biologists, But of course, it's important to understand that the T helper cells is the central cell that is very, very important for the immune system function among the lymphocytes. And it is the same cell that is targeted by the virus, such that when it is killed, then the B cells cannot produce antibodies to counter. The CD8 cannot kill the cells that have been destroyed. They remain living in the body and the virus keeps on replicating. Now, to opportunistic infections. Here, I said we just mentioned briefly, we'll still come back to this next week. I wanted to reduce because you can see this topic is very wide. We have how many pages to go through? We have like over 40 pages. So we just wanted to reduce that so that we don't waste, so that we complete everything within the time. Okay. Now, opportunistic infections, also called the co-occurring conditions. What are they? These are diseases that normally arise, okay, when the immune system has been compromised. When the immune system has been battered such that there is no more strength left to counter these diseases, then they come in. We say that they normally come after immunosuppression. Immunosuppression means the immune system is too weak to withstand any pressure from other diseases. Okay. So opportunistic infections are many. They are very many. But in this class, we are going to consider a few, about 8 of them, which are the most common ones. One of them is latent tuberculosis infection. Latent tuberculosis infection. Now, the latent TB, LTBI, latent TB infection, is not the normal tuberculosis, it's not the active tuberculosis as we know it. What does this mean? Basically, when somebody is healthy, like now, like you guys are healthy now, I suppose, yes, you may be healthy, but you may be having some form of TB infection in you in dormant form. You may be having some TB infection in dormant form. That TB infection in dormant form, in latent form, is what is called latent tuberculosis infection. It is dormant because there are no conditions to activate it. If you have to be tested for latent TB, then you can find that you have latent TB. But when you come into contact with somebody who has active TB, then your latent TB will now resurrect. Your latent TB will now resurrect and you will become a TB patient. Okay? So latent TB is that TB that is not active. Okay? And of course, it can be present in a healthy human being. Okay? So the TB infection is a result of the weak immune system as a result of HIV infection, mostly. So you will find that for people who are suffering from HIV, there's likelihood of having tuberculosis. And why? Is because the latent tuberculosis can be able to become active TB if somebody also has HIV. Okay? So this time here, bacillary load is when we have the maybe the number of TB particles in the blood is so high. It can lead to active TB, and that one normally happens when the immune system has gone down. Now, the TB infection is caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis. This is a bacteria and it attacks the lungs. So something before I proceed is important to understand that when you are discussing any form of a disease, whether it is opportunistic, whether it is these other forms of diseases, it is important to understand the causative agent. One, to understand the causative agent. That is, try to understand what causes that kind of disease. Okay? That's how we learn diseases. First of all, understand the causative, then signs and symptoms, and then maybe modes of treatment, control and treatment, that is it. So we have causative agent, signs and symptoms, control and treatment. But also there's an area for factors that increase the chances of occurrence. That's also important, or predisposing factors, if you like. So the predisposing factors are also important to understand so that you try to eschew yourself from them, okay? You try to run away from those predisposing factors. Now, as for latent TB, or TB in general, it is caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Just like I said when we were introducing, we'll be looking at tuberculosis, latent tuberculosis, Toxoplasma encephalitis. We'll be looking at histoplasmosis, coccidioidomycosis, candidiasis. Those are the opportunistic infections that we are going to look at. I hope you're together. I hope we are together. Now, comorbidities that contribute to the risk of TB are as follows. Comorbidities simply means conditions that might lead to the chances of acquiring TB or predisposing factors. Number one, HIV infection. HIV infection is likely to lead to TB infection because it's an it kills the immunity. And when the immunity system is weakened, such that the CD4 cells are now very low, then TB is likely to rise. Number two is recent TB infection. If somebody had had TB in the past, then that one's likely to be having latent TB. There could be TB in dormant form still, so we say recent TB infection. Then we have current use of immunosuppressant medications as another risk factor for TB infection. Current use of immunosuppressant medication. For example, if you're using ARVs, again, as much as it is good, also there are chances of it interfering with the immune system in a way such that now the latent TB can find it easy, okay? Can find it easy to attack the body to become active TB, okay? Good. So we have this with TB screening. I will not dwell so much on that. Testing of TB, we still not go so much in that. But there's something I want to mention on this page. That as for this TB, when is it recommended to be worried for somebody who's having HIV virus? When is it recommended to be wary of possible occurrence of latent TB? To warrant testing. This one normally happens when the CD4 cells have gone down below 200 cells per milliliter of blood. Below 200 cells per cubic millimeters of blood. When that happens, we will need to do a TB test. If the CD4 count is indicating that the person's number of cells per milliliter cubic of blood is below 200, that calls for TB test so that prophylaxis can be started or giving out of drugs can be started. Okay. Now, evaluation of TB or testing for TB, or when do we want to maybe suspect TB? So here we have some signs and symptoms for TB. And so that's what is important here. We'll go to the signs and symptoms. Of course, TB can be tested using chest radiography or sputum, chest radiography, or maybe taking the sputum as a specimen and then checking for the bacillus TB, bacillus mycobacterium tuberculosis, round-shaped bacteria there. So we have the symptoms. We have cough. There's normally a bad cough that may last for 3 weeks or longer. And you have fever, and you have weight loss, you have night sweats, you have painful chest and chills. These are normally the most common symptoms of TB. I hope you're still there, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're still there. I can see the number is still fairly good. Yes, the number is still fairly good. Now for the rest of those who are there, please don't leave now. I don't want you to leave anymore. Remember, these topics are very wide, and I want us to complete them early enough. Please don't leave. We still have some time, ladies and gentlemen. It's our day, it's our time, so there's no need running away. If you don't have bundles, you can share your phones with your colleagues. Yep. All right. So in that slide, I've said those symptoms important to note. Now, prevention of TB. How do we prevent TB? So we need a combination of antiretroviral drugs, and this one is prevention of TB for somebody living with HIV. All right. So we need a combination of antiretroviral drugs to reduce the chances of developing the TB into active TB. So simple use of the drugs for that, the antiretroviral drugs for that matter, as well as the drugs that control TB. Then we have another type of opportunistic infection is pneumocystis pneumonia. Pneumocystis pneumonia. Now, before I proceed, I want to make a clear difference between this type of pneumonia and the other type of pneumonia, the common type of pneumonia. The other type of pneumonia is called pulmonary pneumonia. It's a bacterial pneumonia. It's a bacterial, the one that people normally associate with coldness. Okay. If we don't put on sweaters, we'll be suffering from pneumonia. That one is pulmonary pneumonia. And of course, they're rightly so. Coldness exacerbates the effect, but does not make it occur. The other one is caused by a bacteria, normally called Streptococcus pneumoniae. But this one here is a fungal pneumonia. There lies the difference. This one is a fungal pneumonia. The one that's opportunistic to AIDS, the one that's opportunistic to HIV or AIDS is a fungal pneumonia, and it's called pneumocystis pneumonia, caused by a fungi called Pneumocystis jirovecii. As you can see there, Pneumocystis jirovecii. Okay, a very big term here. But I said again, try to know the causative agent. Okay, now the causative agent for Pneumocystis pneumonia is Pneumocystis jirovecii. The disease is airborne. Okay, the disease is airborne. It can also be latent and later on becomes active. Now, when does it normally occur for persons living with HIV? The disease normally occurs when the CD4 count is less than 200 cells per millimeter cube of blood. Just like the Mycobacterium tuberculosis. So here we also have when the cells are below 200 cells per millimeter cube of blood, then the risk of developing pneumocystis pneumonia is high, and so we have to work around the clock to return the situation to normal using ARVs, and of course also giving prophylaxis for this kind of disease. Now, clinical symptoms or clinical manifestations: a subacute non-productive cough. Subacute, which means not acute, not very sharp cough, as in the case of TB. That's the difference. Progressive dyspnea. Please silent. So progressive dyspnea, what does this mean? Shortness of breath. Then we have fever. Okay. Then we have what's called rails on auscultation. Rails. Let me put it in bold. Let me put that term in bold. Rails on auscultation. That is when it is examined, physical examination of the pulmonary region using what's called a stethoscope. You know that stethoscope that the doctors normally hang in their necks and then they put on your chest and on their ears. And that's called a stethoscope. So during the examination of pneumocystis pneumonia, if a stethoscope is put on the chest of the person suffering from this disease, then the examiner will feel what's called rails. Rales. These are some kind of rumbling of the chest, some mild rumbling of the chest. Auscultation is that process of listening using a stethoscope, right? But rails is now the sound that it produces. Okay. If untreated, the disease may lead to what's called hypoxemic respiratory failure. Hypoxemic failure. That is where now there's general complication of the respiratory. Apart from this shortness of breath, dyspnea, now failure to breathe properly completely. Now, prophylaxis, or what do we need to do with this disease? Again, I'll not dwell so much on it now. I said what's important here the most is know the causative agent, know the signs and symptoms, and so prophylaxis, I'll not dwell so much on that. I'll go to another disease, and this is Toxoplasma encephalitis. Toxoplasma encephalitis. I can see the number is good. That's nice. That's nice. Don't give up. If you give up, you will fail. If you give up, you will fail. Somebody is already commenting on scientific terms. Yes. Now, how can we learn this without scientific terms, ladies and gentlemen? How can we? Wafula Abigail is already complaining whether it is bio or ukimwi. Yes, ukimwi is bio and bio is ukimwi. So you must know that. Interesting comments here. All right. So let us proceed. Let us proceed. So we have Toxoplasma encephalitis. Now this is another co-occurring conditions, another opportunistic infections. Now this one, the causative agent is caused by what's called Toxoplasma gondii. Toxoplasma gondii, it's a protozoa. It's a protozoa, and so it causes what's called encephalitis or inflammation of the brain. Encephalitis, inflammation of the brain. Now, as to the predisposing factors, we have exposure to cat feces and eating undercooked red meat. Exposure to cat feces and eating undercooked red meat, as well as raw shellfish. So I think here you'll have to pull up your socks a bit. We have a lot to discuss here. The areas are marked in red are important. Let me also mark Toxoplasma gondii as the causative agent, so you know. So the areas are marked in red needs your attention. You can see there, I've said exposure to cat feces, eating undercooked red meat, eating raw shellfish are likely causative agents and are likely factors that can enhance contracting of this disease. Now, as for the link between this disease and HIV, what's the link between this disease and AIDS? If the CD4 count goes below 100, that must be very low, right? Below 100 cells per millimeter cube of blood, per cubic millimeter of blood, then that person is likely to get Toxoplasma encephalitis. Okay, that person is supposed now to start treatment, prophylaxis, and go for antibody testing to detect whether is it really there, because it's now likely to occur. To go for what's called IgG test, antibody testing. We don't want to go into details of that, but just know less than 200 cells per milliliter of blood, chances of Toxoplasma encephalitis occurring very high. Now to clinical symptoms. Now this disease affects the central nervous system, especially when you've seen encephalitis. Encephalitis, something that inflames the brain, on swelling of the brain, then you know the central nervous system is likely to be compromised, because brain is part and parcel of the central nervous system, and so the central nervous system will not be spared. So it affects the central nervous system, and most of the characteristics, we have common ones such as headache, confusion, fever, and focal neurological deficits. Neurological deficits in certain points on the central nervous system. Others are seizures, mental changes in mental status. Somebody may be thinking upside down, and then hemiparesis or partially paralyzes on one side of the body. This is a common thing, especially for before the advent or before the starting of the proper use of ARVs. Those who are having the virus were having problems with hemiparesis or paralysis on one side of the body, where one side of the body, the nervous cells become less active. Okay. Another one is ataxia or impaired balance. You can enjoy the terms, but now you don't have to use the terms in your exams or in your reading. I've tried to always give the true meaning of that, and so you don't have to master the term, but try to understand, use the expression. For example, ataxia is a term used to refer to impaired balance. So impaired balance is a common thing with this kind of disease. Why? Because anything attacking the brain, encephalitis, so swelling of the brain, because the brain also controls balance, so there can be impaired balance. Altered consciousness, then cranial nerve palsies or strains. Prophylaxis, I don't want to go there. Then the fourth disease is called cryptococcal meningitis. Cryptococcal meningitis, another very, very interesting opportunistic infection, cryptococcal meningitis. Now, this one is caused by another fungal infection. This is a fungal infection, and it's caused by the fungi called Cryptococcus neoformans. Now, this one is not the normal meningitis you know. The other meningitis is a bacterial meningitis, and is normally called meningococcal meningitis. Now, this one is caused by not meningococcal meningitis, not that meningitis, but another form of meningitis that is normally associated with AIDS, and it's called Cryptococcus neoformans. And the relationship with AIDS is when the CD4 cells go below 200 cells per cubic millimeters of blood. Clinical manifestations, we are soon stopping, ladies and gentlemen. So I can see the number is going down, down, down. I wish they were. Don't write scientific names. You don't have to, but if you can remember them, well and good. Don't write scientific names. Si lazima. But when you feel like you are you've read enough, why not? Why not? Why not use them? So some people are already saying the data is not there, so to stop. All right, so let's proceed. Now, as for clinical manifestations for cryptococcal meningitis, we have fever and headache. This one is more of, it affects focal, it affects mostly some organs. So we have fever and headache. Then we have also some neurological specific cases, for example, change in mental status, stiffness of the neck, common with even the other meningitis, cranial nerve abnormalities. We have cutaneous manifestations, for example, in the brain. On the skin. Cutaneous manifestations are those manifestations on the skin. So number one, we have molluscum contagiosum or molluscum contagiosum, if you like. These are round, firm, painless bumps on the skin. Then we have pulmonary cryptococcal disease, which of course may come without nervous involvement. So the areas I've highlighted in red can give you a quick preview of the common symptoms. Cleaning, I'll pass that. Prophylaxis, I'll pass that. Then we have cytomegalovirus. Now, cytomegalovirus is another very, very important virus that normally accompanies HIV. Now, this disease is caused by a virus, like we said. The virus is a herpes virus. It's a herpes virus. So in the same class or the same order, the same group, I mean, with herpes simplex virus, which is sexually transmitted. But this one is herpes virus, specifically cytomegalovirus type. Now, this one, it affects the organs. It affects some organs. For example, it affects the eyes, it affects the colon, it affects the esophagus, and also some neurological parts, neurological organs. So in the eyes, it affects the retina. So it causes the swelling of the retina. So we call that the tinnitus. By the way, anytime you see TIS, then know there's a swelling or an inflammation. So it causes an inflammation of the retina, a condition called retinitis. We have colitis, swelling of the colon. or inflammation of the colon, esophagitis, inflammation of the esophagus. Then we have neurological infections. I think because the number is going down, why don't we stop here? We'll pick from cytomegalovirus next time. And so I want to close it at this point so that we don't rush it while many people are off. Maybe we can ask questions. Maybe we can ask questions before we wrap it up. I can see somebody's already in agreement. Okay, so we can ask questions. I respond to them. And then we'll pick on this briefly next time as we do week 6. So if you can write your questions there, I'll be able to respond. Thank you for listening, and thank you for being patient for those who have been there. Hope next time the numbers will be even better. All right, so we can, these terms are purely biological. Yes, they are biological terms because the diseases are biological anyway. Okay, Harriet Nyambone, thank you. Harriet. Okay. Any concern? Robert Mulgot, thank you. Somebody's asking if the blood is okay. How long? Yeah, we are having cut 1 the other week. In 2 weeks' time, we'll be having cut 1. Somebody's asking when are we having cut 1? In 2 weeks' time. In 2 weeks' time, we'll be having cut 1. Why is CMV commonly affecting women? CMV cytomegalovirus is a viral disease, and it mostly is not so common in women anyway. But of course, what the fact is, more women are having AIDS than men. So that could be the reason. But the disease is not having any condition that maybe makes it target women. No, it's just because more women are having AIDS than men. That is who was asking this. This is they're moving so fast. I can't read. Oh, the lesson is enjoyable. Thank you, Sharon. Victor Wanyoni, the lesson was interesting. Thank you. How long does virus, somebody, okay, Naum Chepkosgei, how long does HIV virus take to die when exposed? When exposed, it dies immediately. When exposed, it dies immediately. Mostly 5 minutes. That's what has been recommended, 5 minutes, because it cannot replicate outside the host cell. So 5 minutes, it will be gone. Oh, thank you, Mary. Regular and regular partner, you like that? I like that as well. Thank you. Yeah, you can write abbreviations for exam. You can write abbreviations, no problem. Oh, so the highest the number, the poorer the voice, the voice projection. I see. Oh, thank you, Geoffrey. Yes, the Sharon, does rust nail or iron sheet or razor transmit virus when injured by it? Yes, it does. If the blood is still fresh and is contaminated, likely to get contaminated as well. The cut will be physical or online. The cut will be online, 30 questions with multiple choices. Who was asking that? Joseph Baraza, the cut will be physical, will be online with multiple choices, 30 questions. Sharon, I think I've answered the same question. Where is the CD4 cells made? The CD4 cells are made from the thymus gland. Shabin, the CD4 cells are made in thymus gland. Thymus gland is found below the sternum, okay, behind the sternum in the chest region. Is there any evolution of HIV? Yes, there is mutation. New strains are there. The virus cannot live outside the body. Max status, the virus cannot live outside the body. HIV affects which group of people? Now, from the statistics, the epidemiology we read there, that is funny is asking, it mostly affects women because of so many reasons, social factors, Yeah, because of so many reasons. Those difficult terms, Humphrey Vanjara, those difficult terms, don't bring those difficult terms. No, those difficult terms are part and parcel of learning. Enjoy them, eh? Okay, thank you, Geoffrey. Then Victor Wanyoni. If the virus takes that short time when exposed, why is it not recommended to use sharp objects used by HIV? You never know. Maybe the blood is not dry. Provided the blood is wet, then the virus will still be alive. So you can be using that same object, but the blood is not yet dry. So the risks are very high. Which virus causes AIDS, sir? Human immunodeficiency virus, HIV. That is Edward. And Christabel, is it possible for HIV breastfeeding mothers to pass the virus to the child? Yes, we say Christabel, it can be passed through the colostrum or through the cuts in the breast and the babies and the sons in the baby's mouth. And they can transmit through the colostrum or the breast milk. There's one part that I've not understood, sir. Can I find time? Can I find you physically, and where can I find you? I normally come to college maybe on Mondays like today, but today I'm not in. If I come, I will let you know that maybe one time we meet physically, even for the whole class. Yeah, I did send notes ahead. I did send notes except for week 5. I did send notes. Sharon, I did send notes ahead. I did. Norman, a lesson enjoyed. So actually, okay. So actually, anal sex worse than slow sex. Yes, is worse. Can circumcision? Yes, circumcision can protect. I already said that. Yeah, put the week 1 notes in LMS. Who is the father of HIV? And now that one I don't know now. We said the history. I don't know whether I can remember the history of HIV. Yeah, they said you can breastfeed the baby, They said you can breastfeed for 6 months and AIDS won't be there. That is if at the same time you are giving the baby ARVs and the mother is also taking ARVs, to the point that the virus is suppressed, that the mother cannot be detected to be having the virus. That one, the chances are very low. You can breastfeed in a proper way when there are no cuts, no cuts on the breast and on the baby's mouth, and at the same time, the ARVs are being given to the baby and the mother as well. Does saliva transmit? No. Saliva does not transmit unless there are cuts in the mouth and wounds. Circumcision plays very important role. I'd said that. And sharing what? Okay. What about those children who does not get the virus? Is this about agglutination or no? No, not about agglutination. We've said there's a clause there in that discussion for the perinatal transmission. We said if there is proper use of ARVs, then the baby may not for the first 18 months. Actually, the baby is supposed to be in ARVs for 18 months. Then that baby will be safe from the virus. Which blood group is not more susceptible to HIV contraction? Which is strongest blood group? No, all blood groups are susceptible. I don't want to say this. Though there are some conspiracy theories There are people saying, oh, you know, blood Aries as negative, Aries as positive. I mean, do not get no. There's don't forget about that. I don't want to go there. It is not true. Okay, all blood groups are susceptible. Edward, you're asking about the regular and non-regular sex partners, and asking whether you use condom. If you use protection like condom, there is no problem. What we meant by regular is that that's your partner that you have every other day. You know, this is regular sex partner. So most people will be throwing caution to the wind because you feel this is a person I've been having every day, so I don't need to protect myself, and there lies the danger. So that if any of you messes up around then, because of the risks factors involved, like not using protection, you're likely to get the virus. If you have the virus, if you're HIV positive, how long can you live? You can live as long as you want, provided you properly use ARVs. The saliva cannot transmit HIV, LMAX. Deep kissing, we've already discussed. Dennis Kipchirchir, it does not transmit HIV unless there are cuts in the mouth. Yeah, the notes are always in form of PDF. Kevin. Okay, thank you, Evans Kipchumba. Then, how long does it take for an individual to know that he or she is infected? Because of the kind of, this is Jamila, because of the kind of test that we normally do, Jamila, we normally do serological tests or antigen antibody tests every time we go for testing. 3 months. Those ones take 3 months. So it's good to test, then test again after 3 months. Christabel, I don't know what you're referring to. If you use word for long, then it can affect you. I'm not getting you right. The cut will be out of 30, and there will be cut 2 again, also out of 30. All right, so I think I've responded to most of your concerns. Handshake does not transmit HIV. That is someone asking. Saliva, no. Check the stages of HIV. You said there are 3 stages. There is primary stage, there is latency phase, there is late stage or AIDS stage. Okay, so I want us to stop there. You can do your reading. I'm going to send, for somebody is asking whether can a negative person take ARVs. If no, if a negative, do not try to take any of the ARVs. ARVs we'll discuss in week 7, I think. If infected with the virus, can it be prevented within 72 hours? Yes, Jeff Corey. It can be prevented within 72 hours if you use what is called post-exposure prophylaxis. Post-exposure prophylaxis, a combination of some powerful drugs within the 72 hours. Still, we'll learn that later. We have a whole topic about that. Okay? We have a whole topic about that. Cut in 2 weeks' time, do we include this one? Yes, and even the one for next week. The first 6 weeks. Christabel. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, I think do ARVs stop menstruation? No, they do not. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Good day. I will organize for one physical class one day so that we interact. The risky behavior, we've discussed the factors that increases chances of acquiring the virus. They are the ones that we discussed back there, so you can refer to that. Okay. So, good day, good day. I'll put these notes, I'll put them on LMS. You can get them from there. And if you're not able to get that, I'll ask your reps to download and then share with you. I will I'll tell them to download and then share with you the notes. Eh? Otherwise, thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.